Hey everyone, Gabriel Nassif aka Yellowhat, and this is part 2 of my Crimson Vow set review with Kanister. We're going to be going through the noteworthy blue cards and rate them on a scale from 1 to 5. If you've missed part 1, I'll put the link in the description, and I think it should pop up somewhere on the screen here or maybe here for you. Hope you enjoyed the video.
Talking about blue cards now. Cemetery Illuminator 1, blue, creature spirit. Oops. ETB or attacks, exile a card from a graveyard. Flying, you may look at the top card of a library anytime. Once each turn, you may cast a spell from the top of a library which shares a card type with a card exile with Cemetery Illuminator. 2/3, flying. Again, a lot of text on a card. But it does have the spirit type line, and it is a like 3 mana creature, and like traditionally I remember the combinations of spirits and collected company appearing in some formats, most notably nowadays in Pioneer. It doesn't seem like the worst card you could slot into that ever. Maybe not main deck, maybe sideboard. Some like way to gain card advantage with a spirit seems not terrible to me.
Yeah, I read that card and thought it was just mopey. Reading it again, it does potentially snowball pretty fast if you get an untap with it. It does a little like Course of Crifix action, and maybe in a format like Historic, you play it, you get to exile a Faceless Looting or a Phoenix. The graveyard is actually relevant in Historic.
Oh, that's true.
I'm guessing it's not super relevant in Standard. You do have Leer decks. I guess you have the Leer decks. So yeah, no, that card might be good. It does your.
Oh, actually, correction from the chat. You can cast a spell from the top of your library. You cannot play lands with it ever.
Oh yeah, it doesn't work with lands. Yeah, when I said Courser, I didn't mean like as in the Courser effect. I felt like playing on the top of your deck. No, I know it doesn't work. Yeah, if it worked with lands, it would be even better. Maybe already a little too good, but yeah, no, that card is good type.
To be frank, I misread the card a little bit, and I thought it will be able to play lands, and that was part of what made me slightly excited about it, because if it can like play both creatures and lands, it should be able to cast a huge portion of your deck, so it will be actually a pretty good imitation of an Experimental Frenzy.
Yeah.
But as it cannot cast lands, that is significantly weaker. Also once per turn, but...
Yeah.
So that being said, it's a sorcery speed monster. Do you have a rating for this?
I'm gonna give it a 3. I feel like it's powerful enough. It has potential. It has potentially utility in Historic, where Phoenix is arguably the best deck. It does run into dispute, but it does a lot.
Yeah, I would give it 3 if it could hit lands and cast lands on the top of the deck. Since it cannot do that, I'm much less excited about it than I was previously, so I'll give it a 2.
Alright, what do you got next?
But yeah, the graveyard hit bar is pretty okay. Next card is Cobalt Lancer.
You put that card on the list.
You think it's that bad? I think it's very interesting.
It's a cool concept, but I was struggling to find a specific deck that might want to play that card ever.
I was struggling too, but as I said, I'm optimistic. Blue mana creature zombie horse. Additional cost to cast, exile a creature card from your graveyard. 4 mana, exile Cobalt Lancer from your graveyard, draw a card, 3/3. So yeah, we got a pretty nice wild Nakato in this deck, in this card. Oh, just a blue mana. Blue, kind of a weird color to have effects like this.
Yeah, the only thing we could come up with was Street Wraith to play it on turn 1 in Modern.
Yeah, Street Rave is definitely the go-to thing to enabling like virtually half the cards in Magic the Gathering. There is also other ways to put creatures into the graveyard. For example, ditching a Grief. For example, puts a creature card in your graveyard, then you get to the nice payoff of having a 1-mana 3/3.
You're now the beautiful owner of a horse. Congrats.
Yeah, it is. It is true that probably the hoop is too big to jump through because like what you're getting like it's a 3/3. Like after all, you're getting a 3/3, and that's kind of it. Plus the ability to exile from a graveyard to draw a card, but it's fairly costly, and I couldn't imagine it being very relevant in many contexts.
Yeah, I think we should move on. I'm gonna give it a one hat.
Chad is also asking if a bigger hoop isn't easier to jump through, so that's fairly eye-opening. What did you say? What was your rating?
Oh, one hat.
1 hat.
Meme land.
Yeah, that's pretty mean, but also pretty true. Thank you for the raid, K-Prince. 1 hat for Cobalt Lancer. Yeah, it is a card that's like cool, but really trying to imagine where it could work. I'll go with you on this and I'm gonna give it 1 out of 5. I think this card has the potential to debate people, though. Like, it has that. Do you agree with this?
Maybe my viewers are way too smart.
Well, some of my viewers were asking me if, like, so what do you think of the Cobalt Lancer? Well, it's gonna be so good. Consuming Tide. 2 blue sorcery. Each player chooses a non-land permanent they control, return all other permanents to their owner's hands, then you draw a card for each opponent who has more cards in their hand than you.
Yeah. That's an interesting one. So I felt like these kind of cards are almost never good. And I struggle to see the scenario where you're actually going to draw a card out of the deal. To draw a card, it basically means you need to get rid of your cards in some ways. So because like if you don't play cards and you want to get value out of the bounce, then they're still keeping their best permanent, and it means you have cards in hand because you didn't play them. If you're playing your cards, they get bounced, so you just have as many cards as them. And so the way I was thinking is like you ramp, you're using your cards in hand to ramp to put actual lands in play. So that's a way of getting rid of cards from your hand without adding non-land permanents to the battlefield. I don't know, it's a weird one, but I don't really see it. What about you? Do you have
well, that is a very like lengthy explanation on how you view the card and like what do you see it doing or not doing. But I have a shorter one, more concise one. A dead giveaway on this card is the wording. Then you draw a card for each opponent who has more cards in their hand than you. So obviously it's just like EDH, like bait for like, I don't know, like those who like to play Cyclonic Grid because it bounces everything in EDH is like the same stuff, but if you can also, they get to keep their commander in play and they're smile because, So
no, it's true. Chat is mentioning Foretell, and it's true. When I talked about that card on my stream, people are already mentioning Foretell. So, but yeah, these cards are never good. Sorcery speed, just so awkward. There's almost no world where that card does anything for you. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 1 as well.
All right.
I didn't even have it in my list of cards. To be fair, I didn't have the Spirit Eater, and I ended up giving it free. So
I put the Consuming Tide here for partially comedic value.
Yeah.
Geistlight Snare. 3 mana, instant. This spell costs 1 less to cast if you control a spirit, and also 1 less to cast if you control an enchantment. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 3.
Mm-hmm.
So The idea of having access to a 1 mana leak is pretty enticing, I would say. It seems pretty hard to get there. The requirement of spirit and enchantment kind of hard to mesh together.
Yeah, in standard, I'm not sure. In historic, I mean, you have spirit into curiosity, right? And then you have counterspell up. That's pretty nuts.
Yeah, curiosity was also what came to my mind, like curiosity or like the obsession or whatever version of that effect is kind of a way to combine those two requirements and have a really cheap counter spell. It is also nice that even if you just have a spirit, it is still a mana leak, which is okay. A problematic part may be that it would be hard to have it be mana leak on turn 2.
Yeah, you have good enchantments. You have Omen of the Sea, but that's 2 mana. Do you have a good 1 mana enchantment that you can just play out there that cantrips? And is there anything good in modern maybe?
Well, there's Abundant Growth in modern, but there is also mana leak in modern, so and counter spells. So you would really need this to be 1 mana in modern to have a reason to.
Yeah.
Chad mentions Eidolon of Rhetoric, both a spirit and an enchantment.
All right.
There is some of those enchantment Eidolons, I guess. That's like.
Yeah. I mean, this card might just be the best. Maybe not counting Stallion, not counting reprints. It's possible that's just the best card in the set for historic. If it ends up seeing play in blue-white auras, and that mono blue deck is good. Honestly, every time there's a big historic tournament, I play at least a few matches was the mono blue obsession. Kind of blue skies, and it's a super play draw dependent deck. But I remember I was testing the deck, and it was surprisingly weak to auras, despite the fact I was playing even I think on summons and brazen bars and lots of bounce, but it was surprisingly good against John Food. I was going almost 50-50 against John Sack. My deck was a bunch of 1/1 flyers, so
yeah, it's
maybe that's a card that makes
definitely pretty good if you can counter a 3 mana kind of cumbersome creature with a 1 mana card. And I brought up Eidolon of the Great Revel. Not sure if that's
the white Eidolon is a spirit too. They're all these Eidolons. They're all spirits.
They should be, I think, the Eidolons. So Eidolon of the Great Revel, maybe not the greatest combination with like a counter spell, but. So I could certainly see it being played in like some chat. Alseid of Life's Bounty. It's not a spirit.
Oh, it's a nymph. Oh.
Hateful Eidolon. It's probably going kind of deep, but it is enchantment spirit. Yeah,
except you want to be white-black, probably Abzan, so I don't know where you're getting your blue mana from in that deck.
Well, you've used
Is Core Spirit Dancer a spirit? It literally has the name Spirit in it, but I'm not sure if it's a spirit.
It's also has Core in its name, so it is a Core. It's not a spirit.
Unfortunate.
It's a wizard. Alright, so you said one of the best cards in the set potentially, right? So what is your rating?
I think the ceiling is extremely high. Remind me your definition of 4 woke canisters, please.
4 woke canisters is gonna mean that it's gonna see play and constructed. And like not the best card ever, but
I'm gonna give it a 4 then.
Alright.
I believe. I played Blue Skies in my very first Pro Tour. It was kind of my comeback GP in Lille when I came in second was the Blue Shitters deck, and
4 with a caveat that historic is a format that we are considering.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm not trying to be snarky, just saying that, clarifying, because many people don't consider that too often.
Maybe does modern, there's a Spirit version of Modern ever play Curious Obsession?
Not really. I think there
Really?
is like one person playing spirits on Magic Online, so they play the same list, so maybe there could be.
Yeah.
Alright, I'm gonna give it 3 because I'm a bit less of a believer. And I think it might be hard to cobble that entire deck together, but it's close. I could see myself giving it 4 if I were in, like, for example, if it was more of a type of a card I liked. Hullbreaker Horror.
Yeah.
7 mana, blue, creature, Kraken Horror, flash, can be countered. Whenever you cast a spell, choose up to 1. First, return target spell you don't control to its owner's hand, or second, return target normal permanent to its owner's hand. Also,
yeah, it does a lot. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we have to make a slight pause because K-Prince asks me to ask you for your evaluation of Alrund's Epiphany, Cake W.
I probably gave it like a really low rating. Yeah, I'm notoriously bad at evaluating cards, but I also don't do the exercise very often. So
Yeah, I also was not really impressed by Alrund's Epiphany. I think it was two walk canisters out of 5 because honestly, for the most part, the time walks don't have much attached to them. They kind of suck, but this one like has anything attached to it, and it's like that alone is pretty relevant. So I think Alrund's Epiphany surprised many of us.
mm-hmm.
But back to Hullbreaker's Horror. It's one of those blunt and kind of not pretty control finishers they tend to print like every set or 2.
Yeah, it's a controlled finisher that can be countered, even though a lot of the blue decks play Divide by 0. So that's a slight downside. And I've played Cyclone Summoner in Standard against the green deck specifically. It's not horrendous against the white aggro decks, but a little expensive there. So obviously it doesn't do the summoner effect when it comes into play, but it plays nice. I think one thing to note is that it has the same cost as Memory Deluge, so you can kind of say, I don't know if I guess that's kind of an upside, right? You say go and you have the choice between maybe Hullbreaker. They don't know if you're going to Deluge or if you're going to have Horror in hand. It makes it a bit harder to read. It does a lot. It takes over the game really quick. It's a good card, yeah.
I would say that like being the same cost as Deluge is probably overall a downside of this type of an effect because it means that like your top end in your control deck is already guaranteed by playing Deluge already. You get the like Deluge flashback, and unless you feel like you need more super expensive stuff, then like that makes it a bit more redundant.
Yeah, it's competing with Deluge. That's fair.
So yeah, this card is like they always print that. They never are all that good. Like sometimes people play them in like some low amounts, but this one pretty crucially has a window when it's bad versus removal and just gonna die to like a removal spell. And even though once you are able to untap and cast spells, you can protect it. Technically, it just bounces the removal spell to their hand potentially, so they can actually try again and replay it. So overall, it's kind of like seems like it would die to removal a bit too often for my tastes for like the humongous investment.
Sure. All right. Yeah, I'll give it a 2.
All right, I think I'm also gonna give it a 2 because it's like it's not the worst card ever. I think they only become really good when they can protect themselves from removal. This card kind of lacks in this department. So. Next one, Inspired Idea. 2 blue, sorcery. Cleave 5 mana. Draw 3 cards. Then in parentheses, Your maximum hand size is reduced by 3 for the rest of the game. This one is really interesting because it does just something that hasn't been printed on cards much, if at all, before, so that makes it a little bit harder to evaluate.
Yeah. It has cleave 5 too, where you just draw the 3 cards.
Yeah. With
You
cleave
don't-
5, you draw
don't
3.
You don't have the downside of, yeah.
But
Yeah, no, go ahead, sorry.
alright, so obviously 5 mana, draw 3, sorcery. Not interesting constructed whatsoever, right? Those cards have not really played at sorcery speed. So if this is good, it is mainly for its cheap side, I would be guessing, for the 3 mana side.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple of ways to abuse it, right? You could maybe play it in a reanimator deck. For instance, in Modern, you could imagine, okay, you draw 3, and your hand size reduced, so you get to discard your creature, and you can abuse it in affinity type decks where you just dump your hand and the downside doesn't really hurt you. They do add up, but you could imagine that the first time you're going to play it for free, and down the road, maybe the second time you play it, either you don't even care because everything is your deck super cheap, so even just having a hand size of 1 is not that big of a deal. Or the second copy you cast, you just have the mana to pay 5, and no, it's a kind of, yeah, it's interesting card, maybe even potentially scary card. I don't know if you've put like more specific thoughts into exactly which deck it could go in.
Well, as I keep thinking about it, I noticed the inherent anti-synergy of casting a draw 3, then you frequently have some cards in your hand. So if you're not taking advantage of discarding, it's gonna be a bit hard to use, unless, as you said, you play a really cheap deck. But if you are using it as a discard outlet, it is a 3 mana sorcery speed discard outlet, which is also not that attractive. So it's hard for me to think of an actual use that sidesteps that drawback enough to make it attractive. Also, a question arises: what if you cast Inspired Idea, but you have a Reliquary Tower in play, right? You have no maximum hand size. Your hand size is reduced by 3 for the rest of the game, but, well, if you don't have a hand size, then how can it be reduced?
I mean, it sounds like Tower should overtake the... I mean, I know you're memeing, but it feels like no maximum hand size trumps maximum hand size reduced by 3.
Yes. Yeah, probably. That's a question to, a judge in the chat. So the overall, this Inspired Idea seems pretty potentially potent somewhere, but I have no idea where. And it might be a case that it is nowhere. Like, pretty often we see cards like this that make you think, that's pretty cool. I wonder how do you make this work? And then, nobody ever does. But
Yeah,
maybe sometimes in 10 years from now, somebody digs up an old card and, makes a combo deck with it or something.
Yeah, you also don't have to play 4. It could be a one-off in that, maybe in that affinity deck people have been playing in Modern. It looks like more of a modern card to me than a standard or historic card. If it sees play, it'll probably be in Modern.
I agree. Do you have a rating in mind?
I'm gonna give it a 3. I'm not sure if it's exact the description of the card, but I feel like it'll see play at some point somewhere, and it'll be decent.
Chad also wants to combine it with Triskai Deca file, but file, how do you pronounce it? But reading Triskai Deca feel, it's not that good of a card in general, so I'm probably not gonna go much. I'm gonna give it 3 too. I think you're spot on the evaluation of this card, and kind of again, sometimes what we say is more relevant than the like actual grade itself, because there is enough nuance to the game of Magic the Gathering that you can convey every single idea on a scale from 1 to 5. Overcharged Amaglan, 2 blue. Creature, zombie horror, flash, flying, exploit. So ETB, you may sacrifice a creature. When it exploits, counter target spell, ability, target ability, activated ability, or triggered ability.
Yeah, that card looked really strong when I first read it, or at least kind of exciting. And I started comparing to Mystic Snake, or Mystic Snake, or the other one, Frail Mystic. And I don't know, the exploits cost kind of rough. Free flash flying's nice, buddy. We've played Resto Angel. Resto Angel can be good sometimes just as a buddy, but the force point of toughness on Resto Angel is a huge deal because you're eating like a Mantis Rider or dodging a lightning bolt, and just so many spots where the force point of toughness is nice. That one doesn't have that. Usually when you're playing with blue creatures, you don't have a ton of, or blue deck, you don't have a ton of creatures in your deck. The creature type is not super relevant either. This one's a tough one.
I do think the free flying body compares super favorably to a 2/2 or 3/2 Mystic Snake or Frail Mystic. Like, I think it's pretty significantly better. Flying is pretty good.
Yeah.
But it does give you a problem that you have to solve, the exploitation of a creature. You need to play some stuff that does that, and like ideally an effect like this would want to be paired with other instants. Like, well, the Mystic Snake part of this card would like to be paired with other instants, and the exploit part would be paired with some like sacrificial fodder that typically is more often sorcery speed than not. On the other hand, this can also be treated as a split card, because it is a 4-mana cancel if you sacrifice itself, versus a 4-mana threat flyer, which is also like something that probably worth mentioning, even if
I'm not gonna lie.
Super.
I totally forgot you could just sack it to itself. No, that's a great point.
It can also counter abilities, which could come up. Shark Typhoon is an ability, for example, which like traditionally is something that is good in Control Mirror in large part because it can be countered.
Yeah.
I guess it's like killing the shark, so it's like you're not countering the card draw. So it's not really groundbreaking.
Yeah, free flash flying could be decent in the world of Thalia too. Anything that interacts and doesn't cost more because of Thalia is nice. So no, it's hard to rate. I feel like I'm struggling to rate that card. So,
yeah. Looking through the cards, I also noticed some zombies for standard that seemed not terrible to me. In fact, like it seems to me like zombies were. There's, for example, like there is 2 good 1-drops in zombies already, and there's a few more cards. I'm not sure if this actually works that well in a zombie tribal deck, or if a zombie tribal deck has any legs to stand on, but I think the typing is not meaningless.
Yeah. All right, you go first. I think I might just copy, or
I'm gonna give it 3 out of 5. A pretty generous 3.
Yeah, I think 3 is good. Like it could be like see a decent amount of play. Like it could be like just too weak to ever see play. But yeah.
Yeah, it could definitely flop. So it's a little bit optimistic, but Chad is laughing at the fact that you're just copying. Patchwork Crawler, 2 mana, creature zombie horror, 2 blue, exile target creature cards from your graveyard and put a counter on Patchwork Crawler. It has all activated abilities of all creature cards exiled with it. 1/2. Normally, I wouldn't bring this card to discussion, but on the internet, I've seen that like you can do some combos with that. I'm not exactly. I don't remember what were those combos, because once again it like was a saffron olive tweet. But there is like some, even in standard, some ways to combine. There is, for example, the like demon, which is like black mana, draw 7 cards. I don't remember the name from D&D, from the D&D set.
Yeah.
Asmodeus. Oh, actually, it's black, draw 7 cards. That's much worse.
Yeah, it sounds like you're describing a meme card. The internet's a wild place.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it a 1 hat.
All right, 1 hat is pretty harsh, but also not ungrounded. I think I'll probably go with you. I don't expect this card to really be competitive.
Yeah, the blue scavenging ooze.
Because it does cost 3 mana to consume that card, so even if you like had a combo of this, the setup is pretty enormous.
Yeah.
Stormchaser Drake, 1 blue creature Drake. Flying, when it becomes a target with spell control, draw a card. 2/1. Pretty good stats for a 2 mana like 2/1 flying with an effect like this.
Yeah, it's just an enchantress, right? It's just a core spirit the blue core spirit dancer.
Yeah, it doesn't stack with others in play, but like it doesn't grow, but it is like a baseline flying, baseline 2 power. Yeah. Maybe that's the missing link that we were looking for, the Geist. What's the name? Geist Light Snare. You play blue-black with Stormchaser Drake and Eidolon of Hateful Eidolon, and then you put auras on the Stormchaser Drake. It's not a spirit though, so it's pretty terrible probably. But
no, not counting the counter spell. Just you had white-black auras, and Historica was one of the best decks. And now they usually splash. I think the green splash for the 1/2 Enchantress is good, so you play Abzan. But this lets you play straight just 2 colors. I guess you could play, basically it was a white-blue aura version of the deck, and now you get kind of, your 4 extra Enchantress, because 8's not enough, so you had to pretty much always mulligan a hand that didn't have Enchantress. Now you have SRAM, Core Spirit Dancer, and the Drake, and you can play straight 2 colors. It has flying included, which is super relevant. Well, it could be good in these decks.
Yeah, it also doesn't even have to be exactly identical context, because it is a spell control. So if you, for some reason, like mutate onto it, for example, or if you cast some other pump spells that are not even enchantments, that could open some doors to some pretty nice things. So this one looks pretty vague to me in what exactly it's gonna be doing, but looks pretty powerful. Yeah,
Curious Obsession, you draw a card right away. If you're playing Dive Down in your Mono Blue Obsession deck, you get to kind of cycle your Dive Downs if they're clogging your hands. Kind of a cool card, honestly.
Yeah, I don't quite have it in me to give it 4 out of 5.
It's a little too narrow, and it might not end up being good enough, because as you said, it is a big deal that you don't just draw a card for any enchantment you play on your other creatures. You have to play it on this one specifically, so maybe that's a drawback. I'm gonna give it a 3. It has potential. It has potential to be part of, Blue-Eyed Auras was. I've always liked the white-black version better, and it's only one format. I keep talking about Historic, which is, you don't even ever play Historic, but yeah.
Well, you can. That's why you're the Historic specialist that is going to help me shore my gaps in knowledge.
All right.
I'm not sure if the word shore is proper here, but.
Well, what do you have next?
Next card is Washaway. Blue mana, instant cleave, 1 blue. Counter target spell that wasn't cast from its owner's hand. So a cancel. but also a 1 mana counter, something that wasn't cast from its owner's hand. For example, in Modern, people don't cast Living Hands from their hand. There's also plenty of other effects, I assume, which are hard to think of off the top of my head. But
there's iteration, that's a big one in every format. Expressive iteration. Even
yeah,
though it's usually the land they play off iteration, but it can be the spell. Light
it's
up the stage
also
iteration.
a bit weird because you'd like to counter the iteration like pretty like you prefer to counter the iteration by a pretty huge margin.
In standard, you've got all the foretell cards.
Yeah, Chad mentions Epiphany like 7 times already.
Yeah, it's super narrow though.
It is narrow, but it is a cancel baseline, which like baseline cancel tends to be played occasionally, and then the upside is that it can cost blue mana in certain spots instead of being like foretold for 2 mana and cast for 2 mana, like the Select Coming, for example.
Yeah.
In general, I mostly play Modern, so in Modern, I've been playing with the 4-color Yorion Blink deck, and Washaway was actually a card that I was heavily considering for that deck, partially because it is an answer to because it's an answer to the Cascade decks. It is a blue mana counter a Cascade spell. Most people in most decks use Flusterstorm as the go-to answer. I have found out that I do not like Flusterstorm being a soft counter spell because the games just go too long against those decks if I'm playing something that's like as passive as the 4-color deck.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like a few other options that are similar. Blue mana counter the cascaded spell, but there's like invasive
surgery,
which I think has like a, let's say, comparable upside if you're not big on getting delirium. Probably a bit lower upside if like you're playing, for example, against a Cascade deck that is also against a Rhino deck that is also playing Teferi, because then you get your anti-Cascade spell, Washaway. You can use it to counter Teferi if you have like enough mana.
Yeah.
So that's like the entire reason why I'm interested in this card. Do you have anything to add?
No, not really. I think it's a little narrow for standard, and I'm going to give it a 2 because I think it's going to be, a modern sideboard card, maybe, basically.
Yes, that's like that's it. Let's give it 2/2. It's a modern sideboard card, maybe. Well, it's probably gonna be a sideboard card on my sideboard at some point at least. So I guess not. Maybe.
I mean, if it becomes a staple sideboard modern card, it probably deserves. It's like a weird one to rate. Like it's super specific, but also could just be a solid sideboard card. So
I don't think.
But there's also the chance that it never sees, like you tried it and you're like, okay, no, that card's just, it's not worth to have a sideboard slot dedicated to that card. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it's probably cannot outcompete Flusterstorm in Modern at large, but like in very specific situation where I found Flusterstorm to be bad for like the certain reason. Yeah. But like Flusterstorm is probably much better in like the more tempo-oriented decks that can take advantage of it being like untouchable by the Cascade deck early.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 3.
All right, 3 hearts. Yeah, now I want to give it 3 too because I'm gonna give it 3 too. You convinced me. I guess we convinced each other up.
Yeah, you've got like Disturb maybe. I mean, it's such a huge deal anytime you get to cast it for 1 mana, especially when Memory Deluge is now, a card. If ever you get to go counter or something and boom, get to cast a Memory Deluge in the same turn, it's just such game-winning sequences. It might end up being good. And maybe down the line, there's other ways that you're playing cards not from your hand, and these things become more popular.
Chad mentions commanders a lot as a way to cast a spell not from your hand, and that means that we're done with the blue cards, unless there are any blue cards that I didn't talk about and you wanted to mention.
We don't have to. There's like Syncopate, which is a card I kind of hate because a lot of people, they're always like, why not Syncopate? Anytime Syncopate's legal. So I'm already having nightmares of people asking me why I'm not playing Syncopate in my standard decks. And then you had First Up Discovery, which is a blue and 2 instant speed draw free, either discard 2 cards or discard a basic land. And that card might see play. It's tough because Memory Deluge is standard legal, but that card at least doesn't compete with the casting costs. It's a bit cheaper, and your 2-color control deck in standard plays around 10 or 11 basics, which is enough. If you play 3 colors, though, it probably drops to like 3 basics, and it's hard to get value out of the card. But that card could see it. Probably not, but it's worth mentioning, I guess.
I would have included it on the list of reviewed cards had it been able to discard any lands if it was just compulsive research or at instant speed. But at basic land, I was just like couldn't bring myself to that because who plays basic lands in constructed? Well, standard players often do turn this out, but let's move to the black cards.